Dale, pues ya.
Hi, my name is Ina Tarmente, and my team is Andresa Morano, and we are going to explain our key activity that is consequences of the tobacco in young people. Well, our research question is how does the lack of information on the consequences of tobacco influence the use that young people give to it? Well, our introduction. Tobacco affects the entire population from 14 and 16 years old. People who develop disease and die, the problem is that young people are starting to smoke from very early age and do not develop correctly. And this often happens due to lack of information on the consequences that this generates. The country that has the most smokers is Kiribati, and it is an island of the Kiribati nation in the West Central in Australia. They have the highest index of smokers in the world. The first historical evidence of tobacco is a fossil of tobacco leaf discovered in 2010 in Peru. It has been calculated that it corresponds to the Pleistocene era, approximately 2.5 million years before Christ. It began to be commercialized in the middle of 16th century because it is said that it was a healing plant, and until after the Second World War, they started to consume women. Um, consumption restriction policies started as early as the beginning of the 20th century in 1908 in Great Britain. The sale of tobacco to children was provided and these provisions were extended in 1933. Tobacco advertising was banned on television in 1965. Since then, tobacco taxes have been increased with the justification of health reasons. 1 of 10 adolescents have already started tobacco use, not related to knowledge about health risks without knowing the consequences it has in Mexico. Our PICOT are like population adolescents, invasion inform young people, comparison run campaigns, outcome young people are smoking without knowing the consequences, and our keywords are tobacco smoking, addictions, health risks, adolescents, and our variables are the dependent variable, our beginning of tobacco use, the independent, our attitudes towards tobacco, our control variables are sale of tobacco or devices with nicotine to minors, and our hypothesis is with information campaigns for young people in all cities, the use of tobacco and nicotine in young people will decrease. Our experiment was carried out by doing a Google Forms in the form of a survey made of 25 people between 15 and 19 years old, asking why they started smoking and if they knew the consequences of doing so, among other questions. First of all, we asked if they will change their perspective on smoking or completely quiet smoking if campaigns were launched in their city, and explain their consequences, as well as if when they do physical activities, smoking affected them or not, since they are in development stage and the use of tobacco or nicotine can affect their early development. All of these questions were asked to young people from Ciudad Obregón, Sonora, and then they all moved the same environment and area. These were the results. With this information, we were able to do our conclusions from our original hypothesis. With information campaigns for young people in all cities, the use of tobacco and nicotine in young people will decrease. Has can be Le das para atrás, por favor. As we can see in the table, those who consume tobacco or nicotine the most are those who are 17 years old, who are ones who mostly buy 2 or more weekly devices, followed by 15 years old who buy 2 or more devices weekly. Although 38% of the responses were that it was not right for minors to smoke, why would they still smoke? 72% of those who responded are informed about the consequence, and 58.3%, more than the half, say that they will stop smoking if anti-tobacco campaigns are starting in the town. We have concluded that our hypothesis is real and that by creating and promoting anti-tobacco campaigns, people could drastically quit smoking because 58.3% say that they will quit smoking, which is more than the half. In conclusion, this experiment or hypothesis was real, and if the pandemic had never happened, our investigation could be more exact and realistic because we will have started our movement in Tec de Monterrey, so we can actually see if the movement did it help or only was a waste of time. This type of information is important because it prevents adolescents from starting their life as smokers at a young age and persuading them about the evil they do and that damage their health will make them stop doing it. Smoking tobacco damage and shorts their life.
Hi, my name is Anderson Morano, and today we are gonna talk about the consequences of tobacco in young people. My team is Janet Almenta and me. Research question: how does the lack of information on the consequence of tobacco influence the use of the young people give to it? Introduction. Tobacco affects the entire population from 14 to 16 years old people who develop diseases and die. The problem in the young people are starting to smoke from a very early age and do not develop correctly. And this often happens due to the lack of information on the consequence that this generates. The country that has the most smokers is Kiribati. It is an island of the Kiribati nation in the west central in Australia. They have the highest index of smokers in the world. The first historical evidence of tobacco in a fossil of tobacco leaves discovered in 2010 in Peru. It has been calculated that it corresponds to the Pleistocene era, approximately 2.5 million years before Christ. It began to the commercialization in the middle of the 16th century because it was said that it was a heating plant and until after the Second World War. They start it to consume women's. Consumption restriction policies start as early as the beginning of the 20th century. In 1908, in Great Britain, the sale of tobacco to children was prohibited, and these prohibitions were extended in 1933. Tobacco advertising was banned on television in 1966. Since the tobacco use has been increased with the justification of health resource response. 1 of 10 teenagers have already started tobacco use, not related to knowledge about health risk, without knowing the consequence it has in Mexico. The PICOT. The population is the adolescents or the teenagers. Invention is an informed young people. The comparison, run campaigns, the outcome, young people are smoking without knowing the consequences. The keywords are tobacco, smoking, addictions, health risk, adolescents or teenagers. And then the variables. The independent variable is the attitude of towards tobacco. The dependent variable is beginning of use tobacco use. The control variables is sale of tobacco or devices with nicotine to minors. And our hypothesis is with information campaigns for young people in all cities, the use of tobacco and nicotine in young people would. The experiment was carried out by doing a Google form in a survey made of 25 people between 15 and 19 years old, asking why they start smoking and if they knew the consequences of doing it. First of all, we asked if they will change the perspective on smoking or completely quit smoking. Campaigns were launched in the city regarding its consequences, as well as if when they do physical activity, smoking affect them or not, since they are in the development stage and they use of tobacco. Nicotine can affect early development. All these questions were asked in young people from Ciudad Obregón, Sonora. Then they all moved the same environment area, and these are the results. We can see that people from 16 years old smoke 56%, and then the 12% have 18 years old. Only the people with 19 years old is the 8%, and so on. Then we see if their parents smoke, 64% of their parents didn't smoke, and 36% they do smoke. So it's a good number. With this information, we are able to do our conclusions from our original hypothesis. And our conclusion was, in this experiment, we can conclude that the hypothesis was real. Making campaigns to stop smoking tobacco from young people could dramatically decrease the quantity of smokers. With the information we recollect, people will know the concept of smoking and therefore think twice to smoke a cigarette or generate an addiction. If people don't stop to smoke, but they smoke less, the damage in their organism will be less. If the pandemic had never happened, our investigation could be more exact and realistic because we will start our movement in Tecnológico de Monterrey, so we can actually see if the movement didn't help or it only was a waste of time, because everyone could answer randomly in Google Forms, and we couldn't know that. This is all. Thank you very much.